Hi, I'm Caitlin Dubin, and this is the Rural Woman Podcast. I'm a first-generation farmer who married into agriculture. Born and raised in a city, I was so unfamiliar with where my food came from, but I was determined to figure it out. Through my journey into agriculture, I saw women who were strong but humble, often taking a back seat. To me, these women were leaders who deserved a seat at the table. I created the Rural Woman Podcast to share the voices of women in an industry whose stories often went untold. The rural entrepreneurs who live and breathe their work, full of grit and pride. We come here to share our stories, to be in community with each other, to be challenged and inspired, but most importantly, to be celebrated and to be heard. We may not all live, farm, ranch, or homestead the same, but we are all connected. We are rural women, and our stories are worthy of being told. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Rural Woman Podcast. Today you'll meet Tina Gokstorp. Tina, founder of Good Food Farm, is an award-winning entrepreneur who's redefining regenerative agriculture and farm-to-table products. Tina's journey is nothing short of inspiring. After a successful career in telecommunications, she took a leap of faith into farming, establishing a woman-owned operation dedicated to high-quality pastured chicken and sustainable food production. In our conversation, Tina opens up about the challenges of transforming a hobby farm into a thriving business, the complexities of navigating family dynamics in agriculture, and why mentorship is a critical piece for new farmers. She's also a passionate advocate for diversity in ag leadership, pushing for more women to have a seat at the table. Whether you're a farmer, a food enthusiast, or someone dreaming of making a big career shift, this episode is packed with insights on resilience, sustainability, and building a business with purpose. Without further ado, my friends, let's get to this week's episode with Tina. Tina, welcome to the Rural Woman Podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. And thanks so much for having me. And I do want to just take a second to thank you for the work that you're doing, because I feel like I've been listening to this podcast as I'm kind of building this farm and developing a vision, and just hearing stories of other people who are struggling, who are figuring it out, who are not always getting it right. It's been really meaningful for me. So thank you for that. So I'm Tina Gokstorp. I call myself Farmer Tina. I have a woman-owned and managed farm-to-table social enterprise focused on regenerative farming practices. Our products currently are focused around our outdoor free-range pasture chicken, but we are adding to our products, and we have a vision for a larger product offering down the road. But yeah, we're definitely passionate about seeing more women in ownership and leadership positions in the agriculture sector, because I think we have a lot to offer for sure.
Absolutely, we do. I'm curious, were you born and raised in agriculture? Is this a new career for you?
This is a new career. So I feel like I've always been an entrepreneur, but I didn't always know it. My dad was raised in a farm in Sweden, so that's where kind of the last name comes from. And growing up in the city, I definitely thought farms were just stinky, and I didn't enjoy coming out to visit any of his friends who lived on farms. But as I got older, it just became part of what we did. And when we would drive out in the country, I did become a little curious, because Dad would point out what crops were in the fields. And now it's so second nature, but I do remember those days of just not being able to tell the difference from one thing to another. I'd say, is that corn? He's like, no, that's soybeans. Or is that corn? No, that's wheat. So definitely a city girl. And it took me a long time to kind of fall in love with agriculture and farming. But as kids, we did, pick a lot of our own food. Also didn't necessarily love it, but we didn't have a lot of money, so all the kids would get hauled into the station wagon. We go to the strawberry fields, and my dad would give us the instructions: eat all you can at the field, because you're not getting it when you get home. And when you got home, you had to haul them, and then they got frozen, and cherries and all that stuff. We ate Mom canned and froze, and And that kind of got us through the year.
I love the young person perspective of farming when you're on the outside. And like you said, is that I would say hay, and I'd laugh and point at a bale and say hay, and it was straw. So really my jokes were not that funny. Some people would say they're still not funny, but having that curiosity and that exposure, I think really kind of looking back now, I think how silly it was to not know what was going on around us, especially in proximity to where I lived, to farming and agriculture. So I'm curious, what was your profession before you came into farming?
So I did work in the telecommunications sector. So I kind of, I guess, was fortunate when I was pretty young that I got a job with Rogers, which is a pretty big telecommunications company in Canada, and just kind of stayed there for a number of years and did a few different things there and learned a lot from that experience and really valued it. And then there came a point in time where I just felt, I guess in my 30s, where I felt like, okay, I'm checking the boxes. You've got a good salary and all those things, but it just didn't feel fulfilling. I did go to India, take my yoga teacher training, thinking that that would kind of fill the itch or give me a better sense of doing something meaningful. And it did to a degree, but I still wanted to do something different with my time. So I went out on my own and did some telecommunications consulting, worked on some like deploying new technologies. So did some interesting things. And then really just I ended up selling my house in the city kind of unexpectedly. I mean, I planned to sell it, but I really didn't think through what I was going to do next. And when I sold my house, I realized that I actually was having a hard time finding something in the price range to replace it that I was happy with. So I ended buying a for now house in a small town outside of the city. So I'm in the London area, which is 2 hours west of Toronto. So moved into an area northwest of London, into a small town, into an older house that I just completely renovated, and met a boy, and he was a farmer. And so I lived with him for a little bit on his farm. And I mean, that relationship didn't last, but I really did get that sense of, I like the space. I like being outside. I've always liked, physical work. And so that kind of started me on that journey of agriculture and learning a little bit more about it. And then from there, Dad and I bought a farm together. So we bought the property that I have now. And when I kind of decided to change jobs, so I'd been working on a technology that was owned by Motorola. Google had purchased out Motorola. They discontinued the technology product that I was working on. And I kind of tried with other vendors to make something work, and it just wasn't going to. So I ended up working for a local farm. It was a potato farm, and they worked with retailers, so like Metro and Food Basics. And they didn't work with Loblaws, but they did do some work with Sobeys. So I learned that was a huge crash course in agriculture. And it definitely opened my eyes to there are so many possibilities in agriculture. I mean, right now, I understand why we segregate farmers into producers and processors, but I mean, it's an arbitrary decision. Like, it makes sense in a lot of ways, but it also really isn't mandatory. And I don't think it's necessary. And I think we lose a lot of value by doing that.
I love the eat, pray, love of going to find yourself. And trust me, I'm with you. I probably have thought about getting my yoga teacher training more times than I will ever admit, because I, like you, very much like the box checker. And in my story, I found the farmer, I liked him, I married him. So that was those boxes checked, and, had the career, had all of these things, but still was like, well, what am I missing here? Like, what is it? That piece. For me, it was learning to drive a tractor and never looking back. But I totally get it. How was it with, your dad? Obviously, you said he grew up surrounded by agriculture, not here, but, coming to Canada and being in agriculture to now being back in agriculture with his daughter in a different way. What was that transition like?
I mean, I think my dad is older, so I'm just over 50 now, and he's just over 90. So So when we bought the farm, I think he was 73. So for him, I feel like, and I mean, I don't think everybody would agree, but I definitely feel like it kept him really young. I mean, he did love having work to do, and, he was active doing stuff. There was so much to do. He had lots going on, but we really operated as a hobby farm. And I mean, it is a difficult story because it didn't end well. So I have a number of siblings, and as dad got older, and it became more difficult just for me to manage kind of caring for him. And I mean, I don't think it's an unusual story that, dad is an older guy. He comes from a different generation where men make the rules. And so it was hard for me to do some of the things that I wanted to do. And I mean, I guess it's also a sad story for a lot of farming families because farms are worth a lot of money, and it becomes really difficult to manage, who gets the farm and how can that be done fairly. And I mean, I think it's, in a lot of cases, it's not done fairly, and in a lot of cases it can't be done fairly, and it creates a lot of resentment. And I actually don't think it's always about the money. I think it's about all the stuff that money represents, which is, value and contribution and love and affection. But in my story, it didn't end well. So I did buy the farm, but there is a separation in our family.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And I think it's important that people share those stories, regardless of how hard it is. And you are not alone in that. There are so many people that I have spoken to on mic and off mic about these stories. And each family is so unique and different. And you said it really well. It's not just about money. It's about love. It's about family. And, it's tricky. And I have seen it go very well for people, and I've seen it not go well for people. And I think the thing that really ties it in is the communication piece. And sharing our stories of if it went well is great. I want to hear those stories, but also sharing if it didn't go as planned. So again, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I mean, we need to talk about it more. I totally agree. And I know that OMAFRA has like a whole section on succession. And I think, they're trying to bring it into the conversation, but I think for sure it's something we have to talk about more, because otherwise we don't have a chance. Like, the future generations don't have a chance when they're trying to figure out how to, maintain a farm that they want to keep in their family, or that they want the next generation to kind of take on. But they also, love their family and love all of their children. And I think if we never have those conversations, it will never change.
Absolutely. So you had mentioned that when you started this farming operation, it was more or less starting kind of as a hobby farm. Take us through that progression to where it is today.
So, I mean, we had actually, when I was living with my boyfriend, we had shown dad this property because, I mean, it's not prime farmland. It's in a really heavily, conservative farming area, but it has a creek running through it. It has what I call old creek bed. So it has lowland and highland. So I in my imagination, that potentially is based on some reality. There was a big glacier river running through the property. This is kind of the area where, or close to where, the glaciers ended. And so I think that used to be an old, huge river that was running through. Now it's just a tiny little stream, but there's that low land area. There's a lot of like ravine or areas that are treed or that have bush on them. Some of the plots are a little hard to get to. There's like 6 different land plots. So it's not prime agriculture. So I did fall in love with the property and have always loved, walking around and enjoying all that nature has to offer here. And so we had a farmer that was renting the land that had rented it before we purchased the property. Yeah, so it wasn't prime farmland, and it was rented out to a farmer. And then I've always gardened. So I've always grown my own food, just because I think it tastes so much better. And for whatever reason, probably part of my upbringing, I have always enjoyed like fresh foods. I noticed the difference in terms of flavor, and I love the convenience of it. So I've had a big garden, and then I just started doing some chickens. And I think I've heard a couple of your guests say like that's the gateway drug to livestock. I had a conversation with a friend who is from a farming family, and we were talking about chickens, and he did say to me, I said, well, what am I going to do with the chickens when I'm at work? And he says, well, they don't know you're at work, so they'll be fine. So, I mean, definitely very green, but, dad was game for that. So we built a little chicken coop, and I started out with, 6 chickens and loved it. Like, just a fantastic experience. And I really started to learn a lot about chickens. So that's kind of why we went to chickens. I mean, chickens don't require a lot of infrastructure or upfront costs. I mean, you process them relatively quickly. So when you're raising chickens, you can see income coming in like in a relatively short period of time relative to some other livestock. So, and just because I was familiar with them, that's kind of where I went to it. But yeah, we started it with 6 chickens. It kind of grew over time. I tried doing meat birds. Dad really, it took him a little while to understand why I wanted chickens to be on pasture. But when we first started raising meat birds, we slaughtered them ourselves. So Dad and I watched a YouTube video, and then it's amazing what you can learn on YouTube. And he was really impressed with how much grass they were eating. And he did, I don't know that he ever acknowledged it verbally, but I do feel like he recognized that there was a difference in terms of flavor and quality. So he stopped bothering me so much about that. And I was teaching yoga, so I would sell eggs and chickens to yoga teachers. And then when the conversation started getting pretty serious about transitioning the farm, I mean, I wasn't sure if it was going to work out, but I knew if it was going to work out, I needed to figure out how I was going to pay the bills. And so that's when I started doing chickens. And so the first year, I think we did 600 chickens, and I had a summer student that helped me. And I learned pretty quickly that first summer that there was no way I was going to be able to pay a mortgage on, selling pastured chicken products. So we were selling at farmers markets. And what I really noticed is we didn't just sell chickens, because I'm like, okay, if I'm going to set up a booth at the farmers market, what else makes sense for me to sell there? So we were selling some baked goods. We were selling some quiche. We were selling a few other things. And I just noticed that, if I was lucky, I'd sell $200 worth of chicken cuts, but I was selling, $100 worth of quiche and, this much of that and this much of that. And so it just became really clear to me that if I was going to make it work, we needed to create value-added products. So I don't care what people say, what they actually do is, what matters. So what they say they want to buy from you and what they actually do buy, I find are not always the same thing. And so as much as people tell you that they want, real ingredients from farmers, what they really want is convenience and food from farmers. So that winter, I mean, I think we had over 100 chickens in the freezer. And I just thought, what am I going to do with 100 whole chickens that nobody's buying? We do raise our chickens to maturity. So that also made it challenging. People weren't used to the size of our cuts. And so I had these 100, 7, 8, 9 pound chickens in the freezer, and just started figuring out, okay, take a chicken out, testing this, testing that. I had a bunch of people over that first year testing recipes. And we went with the kebabs because I thought they were really good use of chicken breasts. They were something that we could do on a larger scale. We created some recipes. And I mean, we've evolved our recipes since then based on what sells and what doesn't sell. But that worked out really well. I had one of those hand grinders. So, we tried that out. And so our product lineup now looks like we have 6 different flavors of our pre-marinated kebabs. We have seasoned chicken burgers, breakfast sausage patties, which are made from the chicken gizzard, and they're excellent. We do honey garlic wings, bone broth soups, chicken pot pie. We still do our quiche. We have a smoked chicken chili. I'm sure I'm missing something because the product list has been growing over time. But I mean, definitely this makes a difference. So what we could sell in raw chicken just doesn't even compare to what we sell with the pre-made items that are made from real ingredients. Like they're handmade, homemade, they taste handmade and homemade, but people can just go home and dinner's easy.
I love that you found that correlation, because it is 100% true. Yes, I want fresh, local, delicious ingredients. I don't want to cook it or think about what am I going to make with all of these things. I like convenience.
That's right. What I actually want is all the good things. What I actually do is go to Costco, right?
Guilty. Absolutely. Absolutely. So are you still solely selling at farmers markets, or have you transitioned into different ways of marketing your product?
I mean, we currently just sell at farmers market. So, I mean, people have asked us about an on-farm store, and I tell people, yeah, we definitely want to put an on-farm store. Unfortunately, those cost money. We don't have any of that. And I mean, lots of people can tell you it doesn't cost much money, and I tell them that that's still money that I don't have. So we're trying to, I mean, I've learned this really early too. Like, we are bootstrapping. I struggle. We don't have the equipment that we need. We can't afford to do all the things that we need to do, let alone the things that we want to do. So it's not easy, but it's getting better. Like, as we add new products to our product list, as we get more efficient with our processes, we see results. As I learn better about, how do we approach the farmers market strategy, like which markets work for us, which don't, that's really made a difference. So we have plans to have a retail location with our own commercial kitchen. Right now, we don't. Right now, we just sell at farmers markets. People have, I think the first year I did allow people to come to the farm to pick up. But again, it's one of those things where I feel like what people do and what they say is different. And I feel like people don't understand how hard we work. It's just me. So I don't have a spouse. And so people say they're going to come at a certain time and they don't, or people say they're going to come and then they can't make it that day. And I just cannot pack up meals and leave them bleeding out in a cooler while I'm away for 8 hours and then somebody doesn't come pick them up. So we just stopped doing that and just said, okay, well, we just can't right now, and we'll have to figure it out later. So we are planning to do an online store. We're planning to do a retail location, but right now we strictly sell at farmers markets. And we continually change our market strategy. So we focus on the markets that work, and then we try new markets to replace ones that aren't working.
I don't know if I asked this or not. When did you start selling at farmers markets? Do you remember the year?
Yeah, so we started in 2021, and I didn't actually own the farm then. So it was a little bit of a risk. Again, caused a little bit of friction because I was making decisions about using the farm in a way that Dad didn't necessarily agree with, but I felt like, okay, well, either I'm going to buy him out anyways, or we're going to sell it and it's my investment and I'll just lose it. So we started in 2021, and then I bought the farm in 2022. And so since then, I feel like we haven't made as much progress as I'd hoped, just because, I'm just trying to pay that big fat mortgage with, of course, super high interest rates, that because I can't get conventional financing, which I mean is something else. If any of your listeners have any suggestions, we'd love to hear it. I mean, I'm in an excellent equity position, but how do you start a business that in year 1 or year 2 pays all the bills? I mean, it's just not realistic. So we're making good progress. I think next year will be the year where, we'll kind of hit the targets, and then we can go to conventional lenders. But right now it's, private lenders and loans and all that fun stuff.
There are so many things wrapped up in agriculture, and you've just said them all, right? And we've talked about it. Like, you are a new farmer. How are you supposed to make a go at it? And how are next generations supposed to make a go at it when there's, little or no answers? If a person new in agriculture doesn't have the equity to get in, it's difficult. So finding these places and spaces to talk about this, I think, is a little therapeutic. Like, you're talking to the people who understand and who know. And yeah, if anybody can figure out how to make a real big profit after year 2, let everybody know, because we need to know.
Well, if that were realistic, everybody would be doing it. I mean, I think the thing that comes from my background in what I would call, my other life or that other world, is that agriculture, and this is my perspective, I'm not sure it's true or not, but from my perspective, having lived on the outside, it's like this hidden, like, the Wizard of Oz. It's like everybody goes to the grocery store and there's just a curtain between the rest of the world and what happens in agriculture. And I understand why. I mean, farmers are too busy to do the education. It's not our job. We don't get compensated for it. So I can understand why we don't do it. But also, if we want people to make different decisions, we have to find a way for this to be more available. I mean, when you work in technology, or if you're an entrepreneur, in most other industries, there are incubators, there are, support programs. I mean, I can't even tell you how many mentors I had, or, people that we connected with through networking that helped introduce us to new business, or all of those things that just don't seem to exist in farming. And I do understand why. And I don't want to say, somebody should do this, because again, I mean, it's not that easy. But I think it's important for us, if we want to be more successful, to look at other models in other industries that are working to help people kind of be more successful. And yeah, I think like incubators, better networking, better mentorship, farmers selling to new farmers in ways where instead of me paying interest, tons of interest to private investors who have tons of money, I would have much rather paid these interest rates to, my family, or to somebody who could also provide me with a little bit of help to make it a little easier. And I think when farmers are selling farms, I think, there are ways that they can do that both the buyer and the seller would be better off for it. But again, like it's not so easy, because people need help figuring out those systems and structures, and I'm not sure who would do that.
Right. And I love this conversation, and the piece that I want to focus on is the mentorship piece of agriculture, because either you have it or you don't. And when people are like somewhere in the middle of like, do I have a mentor? Do I not have a mentor? And like you said, you understand why there's things that aren't available, because who has the time to develop, to implement, to do all of these things, or to find what's already out there? Because there, I am really lucky in that I get to have conversations like this and other conversations with incredible women in agriculture who, come from different backgrounds, have different perspectives, have different networks. So when you have those networks, then you're kind of able to expand and be like, oh, well, I talked to so-and-so who talked to so-and-so, and they found a whole network of people who want to invest in agriculture or X, Y, and Z. But if you are one person, how do you find all of that? We come to podcasts, we listen to things, or, you read the news if you have the time, but it's exhausting to always be on the lookout for what is it going to take for me to move to the next level, whether it's, product development, whether it's going to a new market, whether it's, joining a board or any of those things. All of those things take time. They take research and energy. And I think it's safe to say that farmers might be some of the most tired people I've ever come encounter with.
Yeah. And it's discouraging too. So I think it's hard when I feel like I'm fortunate. What I did learn from my previous life is, no doesn't really hurt my feelings that much. Because if I get 100 no's and I get one yes, do I really care? But it is exhausting, and it can be frustrating to always hear no. And so I can understand why, do it.
Yeah. I want to talk about something positive now that we've just bummed everyone out. Let's talk about your customers and your customer base. Obviously, you have been growing over the last few years, and your products are selling. People like what you are making. So,
yeah, the future does feel bright for sure. I feel like I don't do a great job of connecting with customers. We don't have a website yet. I haven't really connected with customers. We kind of have taken in our market approaches. We're here now. Like, I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. I don't know what I'm doing next week, but I'm here now. And even though we've been very poor about kind of promoting where we are, when people show up and they buy our stuff, and when they see, we see people all the time that say, oh, I've been looking for you. I'll take 10 of those things because I don't know when I'm going to see you next. So it's really exciting to hear that, what we thought would work is working. The kebabs are just fantastic. They're a great use of the product. It's a high quality chicken, and then we put some really fun seasonings on it. So that's a really nice dinner. I even love eating those. We've had people buy like 3 or 4 packs of burgers because they're like, these are the best chicken burgers we've ever had. So we get lots of positive feedback. It's super fun kind of creating new recipes. I mean, every year I feel like we solve a problem of, last year we had a problem with too much of this, and then we solve that problem with a new product. So that's really interesting. I mean, we do have some other fun things going on at the farm. We're in the process of building an off-grid bunkie, so trying to focus on ecotourism, which will also give us the opportunity to kind of sell some of our products to people who are staying at the farm, connecting them with, how delicious fresh food tastes, all those kinds of good things. Yeah, we're also in the process of trying to develop a bit of a franchise business model for our product. So we're still pretty early. We're looking for probably just 2 or 3 farms that already produce chicken that are interested to try adding some value-added products to their lineup so that we can really create, I guess, what our value proposition is, how successful farmers can be adding these kinds of products to their lineups. And I mean, I think I'm working with a consultant who has a very similar mindset. It's very focused on regenerative farming, sustainability, creating an opportunity for farmers to be successful. So we've already decided that, we're going to leave some money on the table. It's not going to cost an arm and a leg. We want farmers to be successful. I mean, we have to be compensated for the work that we've done, but it doesn't have to be unreasonable. And then we think there's a way to create kind of the seasoning and sauces in bulk so that if you're going to add these products to your lineup, you'll just get all of the stuff that you need already made. So if you're a small farm like me, I mean, it's exhausting making all the products and then also having to spend a day, putting together all the recipes. So we think if we buy products in larger scale, there's going to be enough of a business case that it won't really cost the farmers more money for us to do it for them, but it will make more sense for us to do kind of large batches of seasoning blends or sauces or stuff like that.
I love this. And I could just geek out about entrepreneurship and franchising and all of the things. Like we were chatting before we hit record. We are all essentially small business owners. Your small business, could be thousands and thousands of acres and have 100 employees, but you're still a family farm doing all of this. And like you had mentioned before, figuring out what it is that you have and how are you going to make it work for your customers? What do your customers want? That takes time and money to develop, and you're figuring it out along the way. Wouldn't it be nice to just like walk in somewhere and be like, hi, I would like my own business. I have XYZ number of chickens. How do I have a value added product? And I don't know where to start. Tina comes in and says, hello, chicken farmer. I have you. Like we have, the research, we have the product development, we have all of these things for you. Why aren't more farmers doing this?
I mean, I think, again, this is where coming from that other world where I just saw this happening all the time, like everybody can't recreate the world. And a lot of people have suggested to us, we should scale up. We should scale up and become really big and do all of these things. And I feel like, yeah, we could, except that that's not what I want for myself in my life. And I feel like what is better to have one person doing a lot of production or to have 100 people all doing, a reasonable amount of production and still we're all supplying the market with the products and, we're distributing the wealth over multiple farms and farm owners. I think all of those things feel a lot better to me. And I think it's going to be more fun and just create more community and do all of those good things and give farmers still some flexibility and to do whatever else they do.
Yeah, what you just said there, Tina, that's like your eat, pray, love moment for farming. Right? Like, no, I don't want to have, 10,000 chickens out the door of my farm, but I would like to be able to have a life that provides me and provides others with good quality food.
Yeah, and just so that people understand, I mean, I think if you haven't thought about doing value-added products, I would highly recommend doing it. So if you think about the agriculture market, producers don't get a lot of the money. I mean, if you look at what, the grain marketing employees make, it's probably more than most farmers make. And then if you look at what marketing executives make for the people who process the products into the stuff that goes in the grocery store shelf, for sure, it's more than what the farmers make. And then the grocery store people also more than what the farmers make. So there is, I mean, I've always given examples of like Dole or Cavendish Farms or all of these places that they are no longer farmers. I mean, they maybe were at some point in time, they stopped being a farmer because they could make more money just getting somebody else to do the farming for them and create the value-added product. So, I mean, in terms of the profit margins that we make, I mean, we charge a premium for our products. So, let's say there's an 8-pound chicken, we would charge like between $45 and $50 for that if people were buying the whole chicken. And when we make our value-added products, we can get almost $100 worth of products from an 8-pound chicken. I mean, there's some additional costs and there's some additional labor in there, but I mean, the numbers still work out to our benefit for sure. So I think it makes sense for farmers to start thinking about where their products go, who's using them, what consumers want, and can they, add some value on their end to retain some of the benefit that they're giving away to a lot of other people.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about your community, and we talked about your customers. You had mentioned that you are, having or building the infrastructure now to have your community come to your farm and do the stays and all of that. What is that going to mean to you as somebody who came from a city background to being able to offer that to the other city dwellers?
I mean, it's a super fun project. I feel like, I don't know how you feel, but this is the time of year where I just kind of, it's like I'm done. It's like my tank is empty and I don't know how I made it through and there's still a lot to do. And just knowing that, this is a fun project for me, it does help to fill my tank up. I mean, I think just having people come and see what I love about this lifestyle is exciting. It's also going to mean a lot for us financially, for sure. I mean, it's going to be a significant source. I mean, the hope is it's going to be a significant source of revenue for us. It's going to help create more awareness about our product so I don't have to go. I mean, my schedule is ridiculous. It's, during the summer season, if I'm lucky to get 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night, 7 days a week, I mean, that's a good week. So just being able to be home a little bit more and not having to race around. And that's going to be really fun. Hopefully, one other thing we want to create at the farm is a market garden, which we don't have yet. We just don't have the resources for it. I'm already thinking about succession. Like I do want to try and bring somebody else into the farm that one day can buy it out over time in a way that's affordable and feasible. So all of those things are super fun and exciting. And I feel like I've lived through the worst of it. Like the first years were painful. It was emotional because of the family separation and just the amount of money that I had to try and come up with every month was debilitating. But as we progressed, we're seeing progress and it's super fun. And I mean, I love the foods that we're creating. I'm so proud of them. They're delicious. They're nutritious. They're made from real ingredients. I mean, we can produce a ton of foods and, we take out 1 bag of garbage because everything is, not packaged and made from real foods and all that good stuff. So that's definitely meaningful for me.
Yeah. And I love what you said about, kind of at either, the end of a growing season or the end of whatever season that you're in. And, if you have something to look forward to in that quieter season or that new season, it's still work. Like I'm still sitting here working today, but this is really good work. And this is the good stuff that makes me want to work hard in agriculture and in farming so we can amplify your story and the other stories of women in agriculture. And it's still a job, but when you have something that, is fulfilling in a different way, it's not work. You're just sitting down having a conversation with a girlfriend. So
and I think farmers need more of that. They need more fun work because they have enough hard, painful work.
We have enough shit work.
They need some fun work. Yeah.
In all aspects.
That's right. Literally and figuratively.
Absolutely. Is there anything that we left out?
I mean, the only other thing I can think of that is a really fun part of my job is we are a small breeder of puppies. So we have some Red Fox Labs, which are a spectacular, red-headed lab. And that's something that definitely fills my cup. I mean, on a hard day, if you can cuddle a puppy, that's pretty great. And we do a limited amount of breeding. Like, it's not my main focus. But again, it's like, the income that the puppies bring in is shockingly different compared to how much effort I put into chicken and how little money we make from that. But yeah, so we do a little bit of that, and it's so fun. So
you
fun.
buried the lead, Tina. This could have been the whole podcast episode.
Yeah, they're the best.
I love that. Honestly, four-legged anything on a farm, like, and if you can have multiple of anything, that's living to me. So
yeah, well, I mean, we're in a position where everybody has to pull their weight. So if you want the privilege of living on this property, everybody's got to contribute. And so we limit the breeding, but it's so fun.
Yeah, so fun. Tina, I feel like I've asked you this question, but if there's anything to really add to it, my last question for you is, what is the most rewarding part about being a rural woman for you?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I'm not a fan of a singular focus. I mean, I don't know if it's my personality or what, but I feel like there's no one thing, but I think it's the combination of the things that does it for me. I mean, I love the outdoors, and I know in my old life, it's easy to get caught up in working in the office and being in the house and being in the car and forgetting to be outside. So I love that part of the work. I do love the physical work. I mean, some days I wish it was less physical, but that really matters to me, that I go outside and I do really good work with my body. I mean, I do love animals, some days more than others, but they are just a gift, and that's super fun. I do love creating real foods. What definitely keeps me going is there's so many possibilities. There's so much to learn. We're trying to focus on sustainability and regenerative farming, and that's just that'll be a lifetime of learning about all of those kinds of things. So that definitely is fun for me too.
All of the good things about farming. All of the good things. That is so good. And it honestly, when you say those things, and I think I'm just as guilty of this, I don't spend enough time thinking about the good things versus all of the things that could go wrong, have gone wrong, and that I haven't even thought of could go wrong yet. So,
well, and I think the other thing that we should probably mention that makes a lot of sense is the good people. I mean, I feel like farming people, they just don't get caught up in the things, what I would call non-important things. And when you meet a farmer, like, they get it. Like, we all struggle and life is hard, and we need to look out for each other and lift each other up. And so I feel like the people you meet that do farming, like, these are good people for sure.
I agree. And you're one of them, Tina.
Thank you
for sharing your story with us today. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. For the listeners who would like to connect with you online, where can they find you?
So we're working on our website, but the domain is goodfoodfarms.ca, although maybe just check the show notes to make sure I got that right. The best place to reach me at this point in time is our Facebook page, which is #visitgffarms. Yeah, and I mean, we're transitioning to Good Food Farms. Eventually, that will be our business operating name. But for now, we're GF Farms, and we're also gf.farms on Instagram, although I don't use Instagram as much at this point in time.
Good. And we will link all of those in the show notes so people can find you and connect with you. And for the local people, go get some chicken, because now I'm hungry.
Yeah, we do a lot of Toronto markets. When we get our website up, and for next year's market schedule, we're going to do a better job of creating the schedule in advance, having some consistency. So you can find us in like St. Thomas. We do the Kamoka market, St. Thomas, Mississauga. We do Bronte, which is in Oakville. Yeah, we do a bunch of markets, quite a few.
So good. So good. Thank you again so much for sharing your story with us, Tina. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for listening to the Rural Woman Podcast. The Rural Woman Podcast is more than just a podcast. We are a community. A huge thank you to the Rural Woman Podcast team, audio editor Max Hofer. A special thanks to our Patreon executive producers, Sarah Riedner from Happiness by the Acre and Carrie Munven from Laystone Farms. To learn how you can become a Patreon executive producer or other ways to financially support the show, head on over to wildrosefarmer.com to learn more. Be sure to hit the follow or subscribe button wherever you listen to the podcast to get the latest episodes directly on your playlist. And if you are loving the show, please be sure to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other platform that accepts ratings and reviews. You can connect with us on social media at The Rural Woman Podcast and with me at Wild Rose Farmer. One of the best ways you can support the show is by sharing it. Send this episode to a friend or share on your social media. Let's strengthen and amplify the voices of women in agriculture together. Until next time, my friend, keep sharing your story.